Oh, hopefully this works. If this doesn't work, I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do. But how we'll play this is I'll wait a few minutes, let some folks join in since we're having a ton of wonderful issues. And then we'll get started. So give me just like, I don't know, 5, 6 minutes. Make sure that folks know what we're doing and that it's over here. Uh, Not exactly how we wanted to start this thing, of course, but that's how we're doing it. Awesome. We've got a few folks trickling in. So, given that, all right, we have 4 people, 4 or 5 people, so we'll go ahead and start this thing. I'm so sorry about the fact that there was a different link. Apparently, TLDR, YouTube doesn't like it when I schedule from my phone, but then also basically start streaming from my computer. So things to learn for next time. Let me make sure that everyone else is aware of this. But in any case, hopefully we'll be off to much better starts now. Also, there will be some sort of a delay, so if I don't quite see your messages right away, that's fine. For those of you watching the stream later, uh, perfectly fine. And if you hear my screaming cat in the background, I am so sorry. So, what exactly are we doing? So let's actually get to the root of this thing. As you can see, I'm very off my rock. But uh, essentially, over the last few months, I'll go fast forward up fastai documents. Jeremy basically wrote this technique called docments, and we'll go ahead and zoom this in a little bit for folks. But basically, rather than documenting, say, your code with a very long string block, as seen here, instead, we document it in a way that's sort of similar to what you would expect from, say, documenting JavaScript. This generally means that we have a variable name, the type that it is, followed by a comment block describing what that input does, what it means, so on and so forth. And this sort of fashion is more aligned with the exploratory scope that is NBDev. You're basically writing as you're going. As you type the variable, you immediately want to go type the definition and the description of it, rather than necessarily having to repeat yourself and go back. It follows that same sort of workflow idea that it tries to proliferate. So as we can see here, I can call fastforce documents, and what it will automatically do for us is pull that variable name as well as the documentation for it. Now, what's also been going on in the background for the last 2 to 3 months, if you've been eyeballing some of my streams, is we incorporated documents into NBDev. So if we, for instance, go over to NBDev and go look at that PR, you will find that we have this amazingly long PR. And basically, this should be, unless that's the other one. No, that's the other one. Sorry. Is closed. There we go. I documents and beta. 45 sounds a lot better for the conversation. But basically, so we start out with our documented function, which is denoted again by this whole type, variable name, and a string to the right of it. And what happens now is when we use nbdev's show doc, which is how you should view the documentation when you did say nbdev or just using the fastai library, it will also show these document pop-ups describing basically what we denoted in that documentation string of how we want to describe those inputs. Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. Glad you guys found it. Yeah, sorry for the broken link. Basically, YouTube doesn't like me. It's horrible. But that's besides the point. So, where does the document sprint come into play? Basically, what myself and about 9 other senior level members in the community, including Jeremy, have been organizing for the last few weeks is a sprint. And in this sprint, we want to give community members the best opportunity they can to submit their first pull request to the library. If they want to get into open source, this is how they can start. And it's as simple as documenting one function. We're not trying to get you to go through and learn an entire notebook and understand every single aspect about it. Instead, we want you to just pick a notebook and learn a little about its code, find a function in the notebook, like say we have this fa collate here, which as shown is a replacement for PyTorch's default collate. And then rather than this T, we rewrite it as a document. So for example, I'll open just a blank Jupyter notebook so you can kind of understand what I mean. Ideally, it's a little more organized than this, but I have to deal with a screaming child in the other room. So what have you. All right, so I'll go ahead and load this on the right here. And we'll load this on the left. All right, so we have this fa collate. Copy paste it. And then we will just quite simply add our document string. Now, ideally, we would also add a type if it makes sense to add a type. So what I mean is, in this case, it accepts a tensor, right? Because it's basically a replacement for PyTorch's collate function. But since fastai has tensor types, there's a lot of different tensor types that it can be, which is part of the reason why we just leave this blank, and also it was faster. So yes, I could absolutely do something like torch.tensor, for example, and then we'll say a set of tensors to be collated. That is my document. Very simple. And then depending on how complex of a function it is, if it's not just returning itself, I might go through and say we return torch.tensor with a string denoting the modified tensor. Now, the key here to help judge whether or not you should be adding this is, does this string make sense? Does it help you understand the code? In this case, it might really not, because we understand it's a collate function in PyTorch, so it's going to just return the collated batch. So again, it might not make sense to include that there. And that's all it is. That's all there is to this. Now the fun gets into the fact that we want to do this for the entire library. Because it is known that, fastai's documentation isn't truly where it can be. It's on the cusp of something, but we can make it greater. And half of that is making this, all of these documented inputs a bit more verbose, explaining how each of these aspects of the library work. And further explaining, what each of these inputs are doing. So with that, we have a few base rules in place to follow along with essentially Jeremy's coding paradigm. So if you read through the documentation for documents, you'll probably see that this is legal. So I could say something like this. However, the return still has to be in the same line, I believe. We don't necessarily want to do that because we care about vertical space and efficiency in that regard. So when you're writing documents, we're still going to make you have it set on the same line, even though that's not necessarily a requirement of documents. The other thing is you're allowed to, say, make a doc string more cohesive and understandable, but keep to a one-line doc string. Make sure that whatever you're trying to say is succinct enough that the function can be explained in a sentence. If it can't, then that's more than likely an issue with the function rather than with being able to explain it in multiple lines, if that makes sense. It should be simple. Like, keep it simple, stupid. Now, how do we know what we can do? How do we know what we should do? How do we even start to contribute? I think this should automatically link for me. Awesome. I will link this in the chat for everyone. But I am hosting essentially a fork of the fastai repo. It is fastai documents. And all of us will contribute to here. And then we'll make one very large pull request into fastai. It won't get squashed and merged. It will have the entire Git history. And so everyone still gets their contributions. We just essentially take the workload off of Jeremy's son. Because of the 10 of us that are basically going to be helping mentor everyone through this experience, all of us have access to this repo, read requirements, write requirements, and also, each time you add a pull request, it requires 2 of us to look at it. And so this lets us keep this sort of separated for a bit, have our own control over it as a community, and then when we're ready and we've polished this, this new wave of documentation, we can just go ahead and merge it into the library, and it's done in extreme vetting process. Now, what you'll find if you come explore here is we're currently working on finishing this up, but there will be open issues for every single notebook. So for example, let's look at 13A, which is fastai's learner class. And here, Benjamin has described the different sections that need to be documented. So you can leave a comment down here, basically claiming which section you'd like to do. Part of this is obviously collaboration. So if multiple people want to go and document a specific portion of the library, that is what the Discord will be excellent for, because you can have constant communication and be able to organize it without accidentally, say, passively trying to do this over GitHub. That's not too efficient, besides just letting a broad range of folks know what you're up to. So if someone happened to pick a section, absolutely don't feel like you can't contribute to that. Get in touch with them, and work on the same branch or work on different branches and delegate the work. So have you. Because the end goal is we want the entire fastai library, as much as we can, to be documented. And as you can see, there's currently 31 open issues. That's 31 notebooks. And there's still about 3 or 4 more to go beyond that. So no matter what your skill set is, no matter what your expertise is, you should be able to document a notebook, depending on if your goal is just to simply take your expert knowledge that you have on the fastai library and go apply that to help someone else. Or if you're brand new and you want to learn the library, you can go pick a notebook, learn what that code is doing, and then as a result of that learning, go contribute back to the rest of the community. The goal is to make this as simple as possible for you to get that check mark of having your first open source contribution. So that's the basic TLDR of organization. Now, what does the Discord look like? So our Discord, as you can see here, this is fastai Discord. On the left, we have a segment of what you will see 4 new channels: resources, general, ask for a review, and first time. And basically, these are self-explanatory. So general is where we're going to keep pretty much any general chat we want about this sprint. Resources will be a read-only channel where I'm going to post essentially all the resources I'm about to show you, as well as a link to this video for folks to constantly reference, as well as sort of TLDR snippets of what you should do and what you need to know. Ask for review is when, say, you're a little iffy about if you want to submit a PR to the repo and you want some folks who maybe aren't actual reviewers to take a look at it, or again, you're trying to organize with other people on a particular notebook or a particular function. You can post your documents in here, the notebook, etc. And you can get some more opinions on whether or not that's the best way that we can describe that particular function. You can iterate with folks and so on until you finally come up with that amazing solution. And then first time is for folks who maybe this was your first time submitting a fastai PR. As we'll see in this video, there's a decent chunk of setup that you need to watch out for. And so if you have any questions, the first time is when mostly the mentors will be trying to give you one-on-one feedback and other members of the community to help you get that first PR. And that way you can officially say you are welcomed into this journey that is open source. So, what does this look like in action? Let's run through a general setup of what this could look like. Now, what you would essentially do is, and I'm going to do the full example sort of from my other account, which is from Walk with fastai. I'm actually going to drop myself a little bit here so folks can see. Also, the cat is screaming in the background. I apologize. The first thing you're going to do is come over here and fork the repo here. Now, specifically, you want to fork the this fork. So you want to make a fork of a fork. And then you're going to go in, modify whatever you want to do. And then when you're ready to submit a PR with your modifications, you're going to come to the pull request tab. Now, I know I'm sort of breaking this up into chunks. This is kind of how my workflow goes, so hopefully it aligns. If not, there'll be plenty of resources for you to read. There probably is. Oh, no, there's not. Luke, that is actually on purpose because we call these documents. And so as a result, it is fastai document. That is purposefully spelled that way, but nice catch. I just say submit new pull request. And then you will make sure the base repository is set to our document sprint. It's only weird for me because this is kind of how it's my fork, so it wants me to try and pull request it back. And then your head repository will be your own. And you will pick a branch and hit create pull request. I'm not 100% sure why this is giving me so many changes, but that's okay. And then you'll say basically, move myself again so we can read a little better. Yeah, that's better. There isn't anything to compare. So for this example, we'll do directions, which might. That's a little annoying. I think add fork docker compose should work. There we go. So I can create a pull request. This is a dummy pull request. Many is actually the one behind this fork, but we're going to ignore that for now. You're going to write a very explicit title. So I'm going to say like either I documented all of notebook XYZ, or I documented this class, or I documented this function. You're going to leave a brief comment explaining basically what you did. And then you can come over to reviewers. And what you'll get immediately is a list of the most of us that will be reviewing your PRs. So you can select any two of us that you'd like. We'll also keep an eye out. So if no reviews were selected, we will assign some. But you can select two of us to go through, look through your PR, and make sure that the document makes sense. We really want to push for two reviewers because, person A and person B understand the function differently. And you, person C, absolutely might. in the sense that you would probably explain it a little differently. So we want to make sure that given an extra known 3 set of eyes, we're really explaining the function as best as we can, or the class, or what have you. And then eventually, you will attach projects and milestones to this, and I'll have directions up for that when those are good to go. This way, we basically can automatically close those open issues as we go, and you can see a sprint tracker. And then once you're ready, you just hit create pull request. It'll open up a pull request for you, and we can take a look at it. Now, how do I recommend you go about doing this? What does a typical workflow look like? So first of all, you're going to want Jupyter Notebook. This could be through Google Colab. Most of my early NBDev and fastai contributions were with Google Colab. If you can modify a Jupyter Notebook, you can absolutely use it. From there, though, I would recommend that you have NBDev installed on your system. That is a known requirement, and I will put a link to it in the chat. Also, my cat is currently trying to break into the room, so if we hear glass shattering, oh boy. But there's a link to the documentation down there. I probably should have put an HTTP on there, but that's fine. Basically, the only things you need to know are 4 things. So first of all, we install NBDev with pip install NBDev. Pretty straightforward. It'll install the most recent version of it. Now, the only asterisk to that is until the next version gets released, which might be this week, depends on when we get everything set up for it. You need to really install the development version of it from GitHub. So this looks like the following. And the reason for that is this is where that document integration is happening. And for those concerned, there will be directions for all of this, both in the description of this video, in the Discord pinned, as well as on the repository for folks to look at and read. And then after you have installed NBDev, you'll notice at the top of each notebook, generally there looks something like from nbdev.showdoc import start. This gives you all the imports you need to be able to do like fastai's show doc function, and you can preview your documents. And then once you've modified a notebook, you've prettied the string, and you're ready to submit your PR, there is a set of 3 commands you need to use in your bash terminal. Now, this doesn't necessarily work as easy in Google Colab, so what my recommendation is for those who are taking this route is you have a clone of the Git repository on your local system. You open a notebook, say, in Colab, so I'll show what that looks like. So say here, right, I've got Colab open. I say open notebook. I say from GitHub. So I'll do, for instance, mine, URCR, fastai document sprint. It'll go through. I can pick a notebook. So we'll do, say, notebook 04 external. Right, now I can go through and come in here, and I can pick, say, if this has a function that I can use. I could say, like, you know, we have fastai path here, folder, and a path to an existing folder, for example. Then all I have to do is say download, and I download the book. And then you just drag and drop that into your clone repository. And then once you're ready to go push to the fastai or push to our branch and submit a PR or have it checked or anything, you don't just get push from here. There's 3 steps you have to follow. That is going to be NBDev clean notebooks. This is also linked in the NBDev tutorial in the docs. It basically describes this process. I would recommend reading that. You're going to do NBDev build lib and NBDev build. This ensures that the source code in fastai is updated to show your documents, and it also ensures that the newly rendered documentation is built as well. If you want to view the documentation locally, this will again also be both in the documentation to be added soon, as well as existing and will be linked. In the nbdev template repository, which again will be linked, it has some steps on how you want to preview the documentation locally. Essentially, you just make sure that you have Jekyll installed, and you just basically call make docs serve. That's all it takes. If you run into issues, absolutely, post this in the Discord, and we will go ahead and help you out with getting the docs previewed. A lot of us have been working hard to make sure we can make this as seamless as possible, so keep an eye out for that. Along with this, if you're someone who uses Docker, we are also working towards making sure that you can have a seamless experience. So for example, if I come over to here and you look in docs, there should be actually no, it would be down in here. There's this Docker Compose, and really it's Docker Compose fork. And if you use Docker, this would be the Docker Compose file that you build off of. It will automatically make sure that you can go and deploy the documentation for you. For those that want to learn this, we'll be posting some resources for you to get a peek on what Docker's like, what this workflow is like to help you get there. Otherwise, let's see. So we talked about what nbdev is, what documents are, why in the world this is useful, showed the minimum requirements it takes. So the last thing, I guess, that would be critically important to for all of you folks is to go ahead and invite some people. We'll go ahead and set this to never, generate a new link, and there you go. It is currently sent in there. If it looks too complicated, I know, definitely ask questions. It's really not as hard as I make it out to be, and I'm sorry if I am. Quite literally all it is fork the repo, pip install nbdev, modify your notebook, and run 3 bash commands. That's it. We will have as many directions as we can to help you out with it. Working with Git already is a headache, I understand, so I imagine we'll be helping some folks out with that as well. But ideally, by the end of this, we will have the fastai documentation much more fleshed out. Each notebook will have a lot more resources available to it for people to look at, as well as when they just open the documentation. So that's about it. Now, starting tomorrow, because not quite feeling 100% today, for every single day, at least for this week, if not next week, I'm going to be streaming both in Discord and in Twitch, as well as YouTube around this time with some other streams and some earlier time zones to basically show me working on documents, and especially in the Discord ones, I'm going to be on there to try and help folks get through their problems live. You can sit there and ask me QA. If there's any questions about the source code in general, absolutely this would be a good place for you to ask it. And if you're not interested in participating, at the bare minimum, keep an eye on it, and come join us in the streams, because you might learn something about the fastai library you didn't know before. That is essentially the other half of this goal: is A, get fastai documented better, but B, enhance your understanding of this library and what it can do. Because for right now, yes, there is sort of this barrier of you need to know so much to get into fastai and to especially understand fastai well, there's a lot you kind of have to figure out through the weeds. And so hopefully by the end of this, we've done a healthy chunk of work to reduce those weeds. But otherwise, I will go ahead and tweet out the Discord link. Spam will probably come, but that's okay. We'll tweet a link to this, as well as finish wrapping up any other documentation for this. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I hoped this could be longer, but again, not quite feeling 100% today. I hope to see a few of you in the Discord, and hopefully we can help turn fastai into something fantastic. Thank you guys for coming.